What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing to you an updated meta analysis for the February 2019 format. Now this is the first weekend that Salamangreats has been legal, and oh man, did this deck make an impact. So I wanted to discuss what happened this past weekend, both at the ARG in Las Vegas, as well as the Pro Play Games Tour event taking place in Atlanta. There's some other regionals taking place as well, but these were the two most notable events, especially because I have the top 16 data from both of them, and we can kind of compare and contrast the data to see what we have to look forward to with YCS Dusseldorf coming up this weekend. But before we get into it, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you guys don't miss a single upload. And if you really love the content that I produce on this channel, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member, because it's thanks to people like Kieran that I'm able to bring you this content on a daily basis. So if you're interested, hit the join button down below or check out the links in the description. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So, kicking things off, here is the top 16 meta breakdown for the ARG event in Las Vegas. And oh man, Salamangreats came out swinging, because this deck took 6 of the top 16 slots. And that's a pretty significant portion. I mean, yeah, this wasn't one of the largest events ever. I mean, it was about 100 and I think 110, 120-ish people. But the thing you have to realize about the ARGs as well as the PPG Tour event is that these events are going to attract the more highly competitive players because the pricing is much better than going to something like a regional. So while the player count may not be as high or about on average with that of something like a regional, the skill gap's going to be a little bit higher, which is why I tend to value these just slightly above a regional, because you're going to be playing better players more often than not. But looking at this breakdown, Salamangreats is the star of the weekend. Now, why is this? Well, the thing is, when it comes to Salamangreats, it's really just good at doing the same thing over and over again, which is generating a board that actually is comprised of multiple disruptions that your opponent just has to kind of deal with. It's very much a control deck in that aspect, because while it doesn't make the most intimidating board, I mean, we're not making boards that are completely unbreakable by any stretch of the imagination, but because of the fact that you're able to recur the main combo starter being Salamangreats Gazelle to get everything going again on the next turn, even if your opponent manages to break the board, it doesn't realistically matter. Your opponent can throw resources at it one after another, but if you're able to assemble the same board again because you can just reset the trap cards for the next turn and do this over and over again, you're slowly going to wither away their resources and they're really not going to have anything left. Additionally though, you do have a lot of firepower in this deck in being able to be offensive just as much as you can be defensive. This is very much a going first strategy, and because it was the breakout weekend for Salamangreats, we saw people experimenting with different things. Most notably was stuff like some people experimenting with the Artifact engine. Playing Artifact Sanctum with Artifact Scythe is not really too bad of an idea if you're already playing a very good control deck that actually has some similarities to something like Trickstar. You know, Trickstar can usually get a lot of its plays going with just a single Candina, and this deck can kind of do the same thing, except it actually makes a little bit more of a board and it has a little bit more combo potential by comparison. But because of that, and because you don't really need to play so many Salamangreats cards specifically, you have room in your deck for stuff like the Artifact engine. You have room in your deck for something like tons of hand traps. We saw people playing Ash Blossom, Effect Veiler. We've got stuff like Fantastical Dragon Phantasma being played in mass. I mean, we've seen this card just everywhere. It's probably almost a main deck staple for this deck if you can afford it, and that's just because it not only helps fix and sculpt your hand, but it allows you to just get all the necessary combo pieces or just more disruptions. I mean, if you're drawing stuff like Veiler or Ash off of Phantasme and having built-in targeting protection and getting a giant body on the board, that seems pretty damn good in my book. Salamangreats looks to be a very strong contender for this format. I think when YCS Dusseldorf runs around this weekend, we'll have a real chance to see how the deck performs at a premier event. But if this weekend is any indication, we have a lot of exciting things to look forward to. Now, I do also want to talk about the next highest represented deck being Danger Thunder Dragon. Now, this was my pick going into this format, and honestly, it's not really a surprise that it still managed to do as well as it did. Danger Thunder Dragon is able to be absolutely explosive with the boards that it can make, not even just just going first and setting up unbreakable boards with stuff like Colossus and all the negates, with stuff like your Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss and your Zombie Sign and all that crazy shit. But then you also have the ability going second to just break through your opponent's boards, because the danger cards give you so many extenders and allow you to keep pushing. Now, one of the biggest weaknesses of this deck is something like Droll and Lockbird, and because Salamangreat has the room to play it, I think that could have also contributed to why this deck actually struggled a little bit, because playing tons of hand traps and stopping this deck at the particular moment can actually make all the difference. And so it could have also been an unfamiliarity with the matchup as well. We'll just have to see once a little bit more time has passed, and you'll see when we get to the PPG pie chart by comparison, the results look a little bit different. Sky Striker was also hanging in there with 2 of the top 16 slots. Really not a surprise. Sky Striker is still a very powerful deck for what it is, but again, Sky Striker is going to need to have the opportunity to adapt its tools for these specific matchups. It looks like it might have to lean more towards Salamangreat, but Danger Thunder still poses a threat to this deck as well, and I still think that it's very much a consistent deck and probably one of the strongest decks of the format, but we'll just have to see once the meta starts to settle where everything ends up. Quickly wrapping this up though, we did have a few other decks. We had 2 Trickstar decks in there, which is pretty cool. One using Extravagance and playing a more control version, and the other playing Sky Strikers and being a little bit more aggressive, so that was pretty neat. There was also stuff like Pendulum Magician, ABC, and a Danger Orcus deck still hanging in there. You know, that deck that just likes to play a ton of cards to eventually go into Borosword Dragon, break a board, and kill your opponent in 1 turn. So that's it for the top 16 for Las Vegas, but I do want to get into the PPG tour in Atlanta, because here is the top 16 pie chart for that event. Now, you might see some similarities here, but you also might see one glaring difference, and that is the fact that Danger Thunder actually had the highest representation compared to Salamangreat. Now, again, Danger Thunder I still think is something you cannot undermine in the slightest, and the thing is, I think between the PPG Tour and the ARG event, I think the PPG event had a collection of players with a much higher skill level, because when you look at some of the names that were in attendance at this event, you've got YCS winners, you've got people that you always see at the top tables at YCSs, so I think that actually has a much greater influence here, just because maybe that just goes to show that Danger Thunder might be the superior deck. But funny enough, Pendulum Magician ended up winning, and it really is no surprise because Jeremy Mitchell is one of the best Pendulum Magician players we have. He's been piloting this deck forever, so congrats to him. But it's cool to see that Pendulum Magician is still able to thrive in this format, being utterly dominated by Danger Thunder, Sky Striker, and now the newly introduced Salamangreat. This is why I'm a little bit cautious to say that Salamangreat is as just amazing as everyone thinks it is, because if that were the case, why wouldn't Salamangreat have equal representation to that of the ARG in Las Vegas? So it's just something to keep in mind. I definitely think Salamangreat's probably a top 5 meta contender. I said that in my top 5 meta decks video, but it's still something to just keep in mind that it's going to take some time to figure out how these decks are going to settle and acclimate in the specific metagame, so people can have specific counter picks, especially designing their decks with the side deck in mind going into games 2 and 3 in terms of how this meta is ultimately going to shape up. There's still some work to be done, and I'm really excited to see how that plays out. But besides the Danger Thunder and the Salamangreat and the Sky Striker, again, Pendulum Magician was in representation in the top 16 at the PPG event. We also had stuff like True Draco, which really isn't a surprise because we saw a few of these running around at YCS Chicago, so there was one of those in contention. There was a Paleozoic deck, so that's pretty neat to see. And then we even had another Danger Orcus deck. I think that's a very interesting, comparison between both of these events, is that one of the Danger Orcus decks managed to top at both of these events. So maybe this is like the sleeper rogue deck of the format. If you're really looking to just start taking the meta by storm, this might be the deck you want to go with, aka Borosword Turbo. Again, we'll just have to see, but it's kind of cool the deck is still doing something even after YCS Chicago. The last thing I wanted to touch on in this video is that, again, Altergeist is nowhere to be found. Now, that doesn't mean Altergeist wasn't in attendance, because I know that's completely untrue, and Altergeist, again, is still popping up on the regional scene and doing its thing, but this is like the 3rd video I've made where Altergeist hasn't made it into a top cut. That's kind of crazy if you think about it. Now, again, you don't want to underestimate Altergeist being in the meta, because it could be something that, if you're not prepared for, it can be very problematic. However, this may be a sign that Altergeist might be on its its way out, because some of the other decks like Danger Thunder or like Sky Striker, or maybe even now Salamangreat, maybe they just outclass something like Altergeist. I think YCS Dusseldorf is going to be very exciting for that reason, to see if we can kind of test some of these theories and these hypotheses on what the best decks are, and see when we got some of Europe's finest going at it, vying for that crown. But guys, those are just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this meta analysis and how you think the format is currently shaping up. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video helpful, consider backing me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member, because just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.